This is Ryan Pierce, host of Completely Serious. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Liz Colburn, host of The Morning Uplift here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you are done with this episode, I hope you'll come back and check out my show, The Morning Uplift, where we talk about finding your beauty in the journey. A new show comes out twice a month on the first and third Mondays. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of The Morning Uplift. Thank you again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hey everyone, welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy and you probably are too. I'm Elisabeth and I'm here today with Lindsay, and we're here to talk nerdy about the brand new trailer for Avengers Endgame that just dropped. So we just all individually saw them, and so we have kind of a few things rolling around in our heads that we wanted to talk about and share with you all.
Well, and it's funny too because there's a whole bunch of trailers that are kind of dropping right now too. We've seen Captain Marvel, and we do know that the beginning of 2019 is going to be very busy for us. So we've got Captain Marvel coming out at the end of March, and then they upped the release date for Avengers Endgame, and that one's going to be at the end of April. So we were kind of expecting May, but now April sounds good to me. And it's interesting that they dropped this title too for Avengers Endgame, because there's even some controversy over that as to whether or not that's actually going to be the real name, which I think is just silly, because isn't it kind of set in stone now?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that, I mean, I personally feel they've kind of written themselves into a corner a little bit, and especially with, with how you can't always trust Marvel and the things that they put out, because then they'll just rip the rug out from under you and be like, ha, I gotcha.
Yeah.
So, but with Endgame, there's so many things that have to happen, and there's things that, at least I'm kind of expecting to happen, and I'm not really sure how they would function without doing certain things. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that all when the movie drops. Obviously, we have the new Spiderman movie coming out in, I think it's June or July, after Endgame is supposed to come out. And, obviously, Spider-Man was one of the ones who, kind of got snapped away. So they're going to have to resolve that.
Right. And the thing is, with the trailer, they don't talk about when that is actually set. We do see him and the possible love interest are together when they're far from home, in quotation marks, far from home. But also, all we really know is that Aunt May she knows that he's Spider-Man. She appreciates that he is. She is okay with it. And that's about it. So it could have happened before Endgame or Infinity War, before the snap, right? It could. We don't really know.
Well, the way that the timeline happened is that the events of Homecoming happened right after Civil War. And so within a certain amount of time after Civil War, so basically that movie happened between Civil War and Infinity War. And with the way that that he kind of walked away from the offer of being an Avenger after, Homecoming, or right at the end of Homecoming, and, the way everything else was kind of set up, it kind of makes me think that it doesn't take place that much longer before Infinity War, because, Tony had set up this whole press conference to announce that, oh yeah, Spider-Man's a part of the Avengers. And then when he declined it, he kind of had to come up with something on the fly. And that's when it's kind of implied that he asked Pepper to marry him. And then at the beginning of Infinity War, him and Pepper are in the park and they're talking about their future and everything like that. So
right.
I don't know. It kind of makes me think that there's not a whole lot of time that happened.
I do feel like it could have happened before Homecoming, though. I feel like it could have been Far From Home before Homecoming, because we don't obviously see him in a suit. There's some debate as to whether or not Nick Fury is there to recruit him initially or secondarily. I'm 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 expecting to be surprised, but we have to talk about Avengers Endgame, not Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yes.
So, what kinds of
So,
things do you think need to happen in Endgame?
well, one of the things that needs to happen is we need to establish like what exactly happened to everybody that got snapped and how they're going to bring certain people back, because there are people that I think are important for the future of the MCU,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just not sure how they would handle it with keeping everybody dead. you know
Right.
so I think basically what is going to happen is Cap is coming up with some plan to either reverse the snap or get to wherever they were snapped away to
Mm-hmm.
and try to free them. And I don't know, my personal money is that Cap isn't going to make it out of Endgame. Um,
Well, he does
I,
there's a little bit of foreshadowing in that too when he says, Natasha looks at him and says, "Hey, this has to work," and he's like, "Well, if it doesn't, I know what I'm gonna do," and it's very uh, premonitionary.
it's kind of like this is his Hail Mary.
Yep.
This is the only
And there's been
thing that he can come up with.
right, and there's been so much foreshadowing with this is we're in the end game now, so we know that this is kind of uh, Doctor Strange did the foreshadowing where he said it was one out of so many possibilities where they did they use the terminology win? I don't even this isn't even winning anymore. I don't they just
Yeah, like, and I was honestly kind of surprised because like going into Infinity War, Cap was actually on my list to bite it.
well, yeah, because his contract is up.
Oh yeah, and I mean Chris Evans obviously has posted that Endgame is the last time he's taken on the mantle of Cap.
Right.
So I mean that's another part of my reason for this is Cap's gonna
Yeah.
bite it. Um, but I had kind of wondered initially with Infinity War if I had thought that Cap was going to die because I thought that they were going to basically take that ending of Civil War where Cap is assassinated and stick that in Infinity War and then go through a fallen sun kind of arc
Right.
like they did in the comics where Cap is dead or, mostly everybody knows he's dead or,
Yeah.
there might be a little question of is he really dead or not. But then like, somebody else takes on the mantle of Captain America, and they kind of come to terms with everything that happened, and so that's what I kind of thought was going to go on in Infinity War, and obviously that didn't happen.
Okay. So hold
So
on a
that's why I kind of wonder is going to happen in Endgame. Then is Cap is finally going to bite it, and then we can move on to this next phase of the MCU where I guess Captain Marvel is basically going to take the helm,
right.
more or less.
So you've heard that the actors who play Bucky and Falcon, they have been contracted on to kind of have their own spin-off of type thing. Have you heard that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I don't know too many details about it, but it
Sure.
really wouldn't surprise me because both Falcon and Bucky are two of the people who took on the mantle
Right.
of Captain America. So that doesn't surprise me at all because if that is ultimately their end game to make a play on words,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that wouldn't surprise me that they're basically extending Captain America's story without using Steve Rogers as Captain America.
Right. And then I was looking into something today about how Iron Man's daughter might take on something with Captain America. I don't know. Everything's so much speculation that I'm just kind of trying to jumble all of these thoughts into one. I, of course, don't want anything to happen to Cap, but I know that it's inevitable and that it's going to. Um, and I'm just concerned about the timeline, really, because we are looking at all these other things that are also going on at the same time. Now, you think that it's Cap is going to either get the gauntlet back to reverse it. Um, what was the other option you said?
Or figure out like where like
where they are and bring them back.
Yeah, where they all basically got snapped
Okay.
to, and try to figure out some way to bring them back out of that. And that's where I think that he'll possibly sacrifice himself in order to free everybody else. Because I mean, that would be a very Cap thing to do. Like, you get to this point in the plan where, you know, in order for the plan to succeed, somebody has to sacrifice themselves. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
Steve Rogers would do that in a heartbeat. He did that in the very first movie where he fell on that grenade with absolutely no question or hesitation.
Right.
So I know he would definitely offer himself up if it meant that his friends could come back.
Yeah, it would be a very Cap thing to do. What about time travel? Because we did see um, Ant-Man at the end of the trailer, and he there it looks like it's kind of an archived video surveillance clip, but then Natasha says that no, that's the front door or something like that.
Yeah, that was really interesting because I mean, at the end of the Ant-Man movie, he's at, like, the end credit scene, he's in the quantum realm when the snap happens, and like everybody up top that was like, helping him in the quantum realm, they all get snapped. So now I'm like, well, how did he get out of the quantum realm? Like, who saves him or what happens? Like,
Well, and they say don't do it because we can't save you, and now they really can't save him, and there's no way for them
yeah.
to have done anything. So, where do you think everybody got snapped to?
I don't know. I mean, there's been speculation that they're inside one of the stones, like the Soul Stone. I don't know if that's the case, but I know that that's one of the speculations, is that basically they're in the Soul Stone and that they'll have to figure a way out of it. I know that's one of the speculations I read online. Whether or not that's the case, I honestly am not sure. Like, I feel that when he snapped, like something obviously happened, but because of, them, like, basically like dissolving, I'm not sure if it was technically death or basically some mode of transportation to another dimension.
Hmm. Okay.
So, like, you dissolve in one dimension and then you kind of get reconstituted in another dimension.
See, I
Does that
sort of
make sense?
assumed that they were dead, like Dunzo, Endgame,
Yeah.
and the
Well, I mean, that's definitely like the way that it's presented.
Yeah.
And I mean, but the thing is that's what Thanos says. And I mean, who knows? Like, maybe Thanos misunderstood everything, involved with the gauntlet and the snap. Like,
Right.
Maybe he thought, oh, well, yeah, it'll get rid of half the people, but maybe that doesn't necessarily mean that they're dead. Maybe that means that, well, they'll populate somewhere else.
But to be
You know?
fair, how does Thanos know where they went anyway? As long as they're gone.
Exactly. Like, I mean, he doesn't care. They're gone, and that's part of his purpose. So, I mean, that's, he'll probably say that, oh, yeah, they're dead, but, he sees that wording and he interprets it as dead because that's his own mission. So whether they are or not, I mean, it doesn't really matter to him, but that's what he's interpreting it as, if that makes sense.
Sure. So I basically figure Ant-Man's going to, however he got out of the quantum realm, yay him, and then they're going to go back in time and stop Thanos from ever doing the snap. That's basically all I got. I mean, pretty.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think this is one area that they've kind of written themselves into a corner, because it's like, when you have this OP of a character, you make it so much more difficult for yourself as a writer, because there's really only so many different ways you can approach this. Because you've written him as so overpowered, even without all of the Infinity Stones.
Right.
Because at the beginning of the movie, I mean, he's basically handing Hulk to himself, like, and he only has like what, two of the stones?
Yeah.
And I mean, which I think is absolutely ridiculous anyway, and shouldn't have been the case. But point aside, like, Thanos is written as extremely powerful,
Right.
and when you deal with powerful characters and you don't write enough weaknesses, you make your story weaker because you have to create all of these, Deus ex machinas in order to explain, how your protagonist can have any kind of a victory against him. And I don't know, to me, that's a bit of a lazy writing mechanism, but there you go.
I think it's funny how certain things kind of translate into daily life. My daughter, for example, she's not someone who she does watch the Marvel movies with me. It is our thing. But she was telling me the other day about how some of the kids on the playground were having issues. They were fighting with each other because um, they were all having a fight because they've created characters that they play in the playground.
Mhm.
Okay, and so when we were growing up, we had this kind of thing too. Whether I told her it sounds very Dungeons and Dragonsy to me, but
Yeah, like role
yeah,
playing.
but so they made up these characters, and she said that they were mad at her because she had made a character that was too OP. And now, and I have this theory that I learn words right when I need to know them. And I'll be honest, I had no idea what OP meant. So we're driving in the car, and I'm like, what does OP mean? And she's like, well, overpowered. And I'm like, okay, cool, got it. And I'm sure that I had it somewhere in my memory banks, but I
Yeah.
also just forgot it. So okay, OP, awesome. And she said that she had to make her character less powerful. And I don't remember what she did, and I don't remember what made the character so OP, but that's how she resolved the issue with this playground group that she's playing with. And there was another little boy who didn't want to, and they were still mad at him because he didn't want to um, under OP his character. I don't know
Yeah.
if that was ever resolved or not, but I think it's interesting because Thanos is just OP and he wants to stay OP. But why does he even need the Infinity Gauntlet to begin with? Because there are so many
Yeah.
instances where he doesn't even use it. We know that he has to close his fist in order to initiate the the Infinity Gauntlet, which seems very like Iron Fisty to me, but okay, cool. Um, so he needs to close it, and there's so many instances where we know that he's not engaging the Infinity Gauntlet in order to overpower or um, win against something that's happening. So why does he even need it other than to just annihilate this large population of people? And he doesn't even know what he's doing to them. Like that doesn't make a whole lot
Yeah,
of
I
sense to
mean,
me.
and this is one of the weaknesses I think in the writing because you portray him as so powerful even without the gauntlet. It almost seems like he's wasting his time
Right.
by searching for all of these infinity stones to put in the gauntlet because I mean, how many years has he been searching for all of these stones? And I mean,
Right.
granted he finds quite a few of
In a
them,
very short period of
one right
time.
after the other in Infinity War.
Once he,
But I mean, you think back to the very first time that he was even, like basically shown in a Marvel
mm-hmm.
movie. And this has been years. And it's like in that time, you could have just gone from planet to planet and done exactly what the gauntlet could have done for you
Right.
because you're powerful enough to do that.
Isn't it interesting that he got the stones so quickly after he stopped having those two cronies of his looking for them? He says, "Well, I
Yeah.
guess I'll have to do it myself." And I just
Yeah. And it's like, if you're so powerful, why do you even have cronies? Why do you need them?
laziness,
I
not
guess
terribly.
it it again, it kind of reminds me of this South Park episode where the boys are all like they're role playing all these different ninja characters, and Cartman's is named Bullrog, and he's coming out like usually the kids have like, oh well, my character has this power and my character has this power, and Cartman just keeps inventing all these new powers, and they finally tell him you can only have one power, so what is it?
Oh,
And Cartman's like, I have the power to have all the powers I want.
right.
And that's basically I think what Thanos is to me. Like he just keeps pulling
I
something
have it all.
out of the locker to use, and it's like, well, at this point you don't really need the Infinity Gauntlet, so what was the whole
Right.
point of everything?
Are there any characters that are possibly more powerful than him? Taking aside him never getting all the stones together, so other than the possibility of Cap or other Avengers going back in time and making it so he can't even get the stones together, there's also the possibility then that there is someone who could overpower him. Unfortunately, though, I think those would be gods, right? So Hela's dead. So is Odin. Do we think Thor could possibly, with Storm Chaser, get it together?
He could. And I mean, honestly, Hulk could have
Really?
totally taken him on, and that's part of why I'm so mad at the beginning of that movie, because it completely underplayed
Right.
the Hulk and his power.
But there's that theory that the Hulk isn't really the Hulk,
That it's
that it's
Loki.
Loki. Yeah,
But the thing is he it doesn't add up to
I
me.
know.
Like,
It doesn't add up to me
and I mean,
either.
that's the thing is, you have to look at it is are the writers trying to be sly in saying, oh well, this is really Loki, or is the writing just that bad? And considering the rest of the movie, I think it's the writing is just that bad.
See, I
And
disagree with
that's
you.
just
I'm
me.
I'm hoping that they're going to pull something out that's just absolutely insanity, and it makes so much sense when you go back and watch all the movies over again. 'Cause-
I mean, I hope so. I mean, I don't. Here's the thing: is I don't want the movies to not be good. I
right,
want the movies to be good, but with the current trend, and I mean, this is Hollywood in general too, is appealing to the lowest common denominator and putting minimal effort into writing and acting and storytelling and things like that. I'm not always that hopeful, and I know that that kind of comes off as, oh well, you just don't like it,
right.
or oh, you're just being pessimistic, but I mean, really, I want it to be good. I
Right.
want it to be good.
Well, and it's
And I mean,
interesting because what I think is the hardest part about this is that there are so many factors playing into this. If they were really trying to make the MCU exactly like the comics, they would have so many critics and so many like ridiculous storylines because we did talk about how all of those really got written. They were so all over the place, and you got to make this happen and that happen and fill in the blanks and all of that with the writing of the comic books, it makes for the MCU to really have to pick and choose what they're going to do, which arc they're going to actually follow, what they're really looking for to happen. So I like the idea of the Fallen Sun arc possibly going on with Falcon and Bucky, and I like the idea of kind of like an end part being similar, but I do realize that you can't please everybody. You can't make everybody happy, but I'd like to think that they're not just trying to make something that is visually and cognitively appealing for the lowest common denominator. Like
yeah.
I will admit when I first started watching Avengers, I was legit like dumber than dumb. It was a first date. We ended up going to Culver's afterwards. I didn't really care about the movie. I thought it was not the best first date movie, but I also don't think you should go see a movie on a first date. So whatever. But someone else was buying a movie and buying ice cream, so I guess at that time in my life that's what I was looking for. And I hadn't seen anything. I hadn't seen Iron Man. I hadn't seen Hulk. I hadn't seen anything. Like nothing. Um, so for me, seeing Avengers and falling in love with Cap and all of that stuff was sort of all eventual for me. And
Hmm.
now I have this affinity for the storyline and this desire to know more and which comic books can I read in what period of time and all of that. So I like that someone like me could get into this, to get into the MCU and geek out about it and nerd out about it and all of that. Like I really love that. But I also like to think that I'm not part of that group that could get suckered in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, if I'm being honest, Avengers was one of my introductions to Marvel as
Okay.
well. I think I had seen Iron Man, but Avengers is where I really kind of cemented my love for
Mm-hmm.
Marvel, and it was after that that I started like looking online and reading comics and reading, Wikipedia entries and,
Sure.
the Marvel database and all that stuff, because, that is what drew me in. And I don't think it's a bad thing to be drawn into, such a vast, universe such as Marvel by a movie that is more or less marketed to the masses. I just hope that they keep in mind that, that doesn't mean that we want you to go down the route of every other Hollywood movie that is,
Right.
currently happening these days.
Exactly.
Like keep up the quality. I liked the original, Avengers in the quality of the writing, even if it wasn't perfect. The stories that they presented and the characters that they had and the development that they had of those characters, it was
Right.
great. And I think that's what appealed to me when I first saw it. And, I just, it's, they've kind of become my babies now. And
Right.
so I'm like, just be nice to my babies, just treat them well. Even if some of them, end up dying for realsies or staying dead for realsies, give it a purpose and make
Right.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because there's been so much fan service in the Hollywood realm that it's hard to differentiate how much of it is staying true to the comics and staying true to the fans, versus people who are watching it because I know people who just go and see every movie they can because they like to go to the movies.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people. I'll wait for Redbox, or I'll wait for them to come out in a venue that I can actually see. But the Marvel movies, I spend the $12 to go and see them when I want to see them with my daughter and make sure that we see them in the theater, and all of that. So I really feel the same way, that these are kind of, this is my thing right now, and I don't even know what's going to happen and when it's going to drop off, that I don't continue to watch them, because Cap, I've always been Team Cap. So then what? And I'm excited about Captain Marvel. We didn't even really touch about Captain Marvel, which is why I wanted to talk about Spider-Man Far From Home, because we see Nick Fury doing all these weird background things now, and he hasn't been someone who we've really paid very much attention to. He's always sort of been in the background, but I feel like we're going to see more of him in Far From Home and um, Captain Marvel than we're used to seeing. Do we know what
Yeah.
he's going to be doing with Captain Marvel? Do we know anything about that storyline?
I'm really not sure. I mean, and here's the thing about Spider-Man is Marvel didn't really have the rights to
Right.
Spider-Man to do anything with him until
Uh-huh.
recently. And so, when they were, planning their whole MCU, they don't I think they didn't really take into account Spider-Man or any storylines really involving him because they didn't have
Right.
him. And then all of a sudden, oh, we have him, we can do this
Yeah.
now. And it became a kind of, thing where it's like, okay, well, we got to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to fit him in, because I mean, now that we have him, we have to do something with him.
Right.
So I mean, Spider-Man is a huge part of the Marvel universe in general. I mean, obviously
Obviously.
he's,
Well, he's Stanley's baby. He's, you know,
yeah. And I mean, even just the Peter Parker version. I mean, Peter Parker isn't the only
right.
Spider-Man, but he's the most well-known and well-recognized one. And since we've only had like such little exposure with Tom Holland in the MCU, I would hope that they're not just immediately going to jump to Miles Morales for Far From Home. Which, I mean, it would be cool to see him, but I don't want to abandon Peter Parker and Tom Holland just yet, because he's the he's the reason I actually really love Spider-Man. Before, I was kind of like neutral on him,
Yeah.
but now, like, Tom Holland and his performance made me really fall in love with
Well, see,
Spider-Man.
and that's
So,
that's something that the MCU has done too, because I feel the same way. I really couldn't have cared less about Spider-Man prior to this, but now
mhm,
that we are getting this other take on him, I'm digging it now. And I'll admit,
yeah,
earlier this year I was probably all like, nah, whatever, but now I'm feeling it.
yeah, and I'm kind of wondering how they're gonna do it for Captain Marvel, because I've never been the biggest Carol Danvers fan, even back when she was Ms.
Mhm.
Marvel. I don't know. I'm just, not that I've not disliked her or anything like that. She's never been like one of the characters that I kind of fawn over, like, oh, it's Ms. Marvel or Captain Marvel, whatever they're calling her now.
Sure.
Like, it's not, she's never been a character that I've taken a particular interest in. So I'm kind of interested to see if they'll pull another Spider-Man for me and make me interested.
Yeah.
Or if it's gonna basically be like the same thing. It's like, okay, I don't really care.
And that'd be okay with me because I'm really kind of looking for a leading lady that I can get behind.
Yeah.
We haven't really had very much of that with the MCU. Everyone's kind of a not a background character because you've got Black Widow and all of these other people that are there, and they're great parts of the Avengers. They're definitely there, but I really want someone who I want to dress up as and
Yeah.
buy the books for my daughter and all of that. So I feel like I might be able to get behind. I'd like to be able to get behind Captain Marvel. We'll see.
Yeah.
Um,
And I kind of wonder if in the next phase of MCU that they'll bring in some of the younger characters that they have. Like they'll bring in the current Ms. Marvel, who is Kamala Khan. She's like, a teenager
mhm.
at this point. And or if they'll bring in some of her contemporaries to kind of take over from the old guard,
Sure.
which was Iron Man, Captain America, and all that stuff. So I wonder if the whole thing with Endgame is basically going to be the passing of the guard, whereas, the older
Yeah.
characters, if they survive, maybe, just kind of retire.
Right.
And it's like, okay, we've had enough of this. We've done enough of the saving the world. Now it's on
That's
you. And they hand it
right.
off to
Yeah.
Captain Marvel and Spider-Man and maybe Ms. Marvel and, maybe some other heroes, to make their own stories with.
Well, and I kind of agree with you. It's got to kind of happen because it's not coincidence that all of or most of the main original Avengers are still alive.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be like one last push from the old school, and then basically like pass the baton. Like, okay, it's yours now,
Old school to the new
And
school. New school's not a thing. You can't say new school. That's weird, but I get it.
yeah, I know we're at that awkward age where it's like we're not old school, but we're not really new school either. We're in the middle, but it's okay.
Okay, well, I think that is all we have for today. We did cover quite a few of the different trailers, so we would love to hear what you have to say about the trailers that you've been able to see, the things that have been leaked, and all of the things that are currently happening in the MCU. Thank you so much for getting nerdy with us today on Beauties and Headcanons. If you enjoyed this episode, even if you didn't, make sure to share it with a friend. Keep the nerds flowing. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. And I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Elizabeth, and thanks for getting nerdy with us on Beauties and Headcanons.